Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins in Mexico with a child named Miguel. He was raised by his mother, Rosa, since his father died when he was a newborn. One day, Rosa is cooking at home, when she receives a phone call from her cousin, Carlos. He tells Rosa that a drug cartel is looking for him, after stealing their significant sum of money. So he asks her to collect the stolen money and flee Mexico as soon as possible. Carlos is eventually apprehended by a cartel, led by Mauricio. When Mauricio checks his phone, he discovers Carlos has just contacted Rosa. He immediately intends to track down her, learning that Carlos provided the cartel money to her. Carlos is murdered by Mauricio's men. A veteran Marine, Jim Hansen, is on duty to defend the American-Mexico border, notably in the Arizona area, from illegal immigrants. Jim notices some immigrants who are secretly about to cross the border, while watching his livestock. He promptly informs other officers of his discoveries, before following the immigrants. After some time, he comes upon a Mexican man with a wound on his leg. The man's companions abandoned him, since the wound on his leg rendered him unable to walk. Jim reports it to another cop over the radio again and returns home. When a bank official arrives at Jim's house, he intends to collect debts. Jim discovers he has a lot of debt, since he had to pay for his late wife's cancer surgery. Worse, if he cannot pay the bill, his home will be taken away. He has no money, so he has to beg the debt collector for a few more weeks. He goes to a cattle farmer in the afternoon, to sell some of his cows. However, the cattle farmer offers him a low price. Jim is perplexed, because despite selling all his cows, he still lacks the funds to pay off his debts. He goes to the bar in the evening to unwind for a while. There he meets his border police officer's stepdaughter, Sarah. He tells her about his debt problems, which could lead to losing his home. He drinks so much that Sarah has to drive him home. Rosa and Miguel are being pursued by a cartel the next day, near the Mexican-American border. They are attempting to enter America via the iron fence, when they encounter Jim, who happened to be passing by. Rosa, who is now an illegal immigrant, begs Jim not to report her and Miguel to border control. Soon, Mauricio and his crew come, and he demands that Jim hand over Rosa and Miguel. Jim finally decides to protect them, realizing their lives are in danger. This clearly enrages Mauricio, and a gunfight occurs between Jim and the cartel. Jim manages to shoot one of Mauricio's guys, before fleeing in a pickup with Rosa and Miguel. But Mauricio refuses to let them flee. He makes an attempt to catch up, however, Jim is able to escape, and Mauricio is even more enraged when he finds that his brother, who Jim shot, has died. From there, Mauricio develops a vendetta against Jim Hansen. Jim, on the other hand, discovers Rosa has been shot. Her life's in jeopardy, and hands Jim a bag and her family's address in Chicago, pleading him to take Miguel to his grandmother. She breathes her last after saying that. When the medical and police personnel arrive at the crime scene in evening, Sarah informs Jim that Miguel would be brought to the police station, and handed over to his family. The next day, Jim is at the border crossing with his dog, Jackson, when he notices a car belonging to a drug cartel in the parking lot. But it doesn't appear to upset him. He unzips the bag Rosa had given him, and discovers a big sum of money inside. Given his financial situation, Jim jumps in his car and drives to the bank, to pay off all his bills. But when he sees Rosa's bloodstain on the bag, his apathy begins to break. He remembers being assigned the task of watching after Miguel. As a result, he returns to the border office, and discovers that Miguel will be returned to his family, who are waiting outside. But he quickly realizes that the family in question is Mauricio's. So when the office secretary is on the phone, Jim goes to Miguel, and secretly carries him away. Meanwhile, Mauricio stands in the parking lot, watching Jim and Miguel go. He resolves to invade American territory in order to kill them, and reclaim his money. Jim goes home moments later, to get some of his clothes and weapons. Then he goes directly to Chicago with Miguel. Mauricio and his companions begin to cross the American border. The border patrol officers appear to be well versed in the atrocities committed by Mexican drug cartels. Frightened, he let Mauricio and his gang simply enter. Mauricio then goes straight to Jim's place. He enters the house and discovers Jim's credit card documents, as well as a Marine Award badge, showing that Jim is not an average person. He grabs the badge, and torches Jim's house. To find his credit card details, Mauricio plans to meet with a cartel member in America. Elsewhere, Jim has stopped at a petrol station to refill and purchase a map, to help him navigate his journey to Chicago. Unfortunately, he is unaware that Mauricio has tracked him down, using the credit card he used at the petrol station. He and his group waste little time in heading straight towards the gas station. When they arrive, Mauricio asks the shop assistant where Jim was heading. However, the shop assistant is unaware, and also opposes him reviewing the cameras. Angry by her behavior, Mauricio kills her. According to the video footage, Jim is heading east. Meanwhile, Jim is pulled over by police, who demand that he display his driver's license and identity card. He reveals the truth: he is carrying a pistol and a certificate of ownership. But the police want to take his pistol, and also desire to speak with Miguel. Jim reluctantly follows the police into the vehicle. But it doesn't take long for Jim to discover the cop was on the phone with someone. He doesn't say anything to Miguel, and confronts the cop, becoming suspicious, and his concerns are confirmed. The cartel has hired the cops to locate Miguel. Jim then assaults the officer without hesitation, knocking him unconscious. He instructs Miguel to flee before the cartels come. Not long after, Mauricio arrives and quizzes the cop about Jim and Miguel's whereabouts. But the cop is unaware, since they departed while he was unconscious. Upon hearing this, Mauricio becomes enraged, and shoots the officer. Unfortunately, Mauricio discovers Jim's map. Jim decides to go to a gun shop, and purchases a shotgun, his favorite weapon. They spend the night in a motel, and promptly fall asleep. Jim wakes up at about 2 in the night, and decides to go out to spend the night with Jackson. He just exits the room, when he notices Mauricio and his group in the hotel lobby. He immediately wakes up Miguel, and contacts the police to report a robbery at the motel. He then leads Miguel away into the bushes. Soon, Mauricio and his crew break into Jim's room and discover him missing. They search the hotel, before an enraged Mauricio yells and threatens to kill Jim. After he has left, Jim instructs Miguel to get in the car, while he returns to the hotel in search of Jackson. But the timing is off. Jim discovers Jackson barking at Mauricio, and the dog is shot dead right in front of his eyes, shattering his heart. They bury Jackson on the property the next day, and go to a church, where Miguel wants to pray for his late mother. After the prayer, the priest approaches Jim and asks if Miguel is his grandchild. Jim responds truthfully, stating he was trusted to look after him, and has no link to him at all. He then contacts Sarah, who demands that he return Miguel to the police. He declines though, because he is determined to accompany Miguel to his family in Chicago. They begin their journey, while the cartel is at a loss for what to do to apprehend Jim. But at that moment, Mauricio and his gang discover hints on Jim's map. Miguel had designated the city of Chicago with a red marker on the map. When Mauricio realizes where Jim is going, he immediately dispatches a cartel in Chicago, to catch him on the expressway. Jim and Miguel, exhausted from their trek, relax under the bridge, while starting a fire to warm themselves. To keep the fire going, they burn the cartel's money. They resume their trek and land in the Chicago area the next day. However, when crossing the highway, Jim notices a cartel group on the flyover. He senses he is under siege, and chooses to continue his journey toward the countryside, in order to avoid danger. Mauricio and his men, on the other hand, know exactly where Jim is. They promptly pursue and intercept him in the lead. Fortunately, Jim is able to sidestep once again, and drive Mauricio's car into the woods. Jim swiftly accelerates away, forcing Mauricio and his guys to spin around and pursue him. He elects to pause his descent down the slope, to shoot the pursuers' cars. A former Marine sniper, he manages to shoot Mauricio's driver, causing his car to flip down on the side of the road. Mauricio and the 2 remaining members then exit the vehicle. Jim rushes Miguel to safety, and they take refuge in a nearby fodder shed. Jim aims his gun towards the attacker from behind the window, and manages to kill one of Mauricio's guys with accuracy. There are now only 2 left. Jim instructs Miguel to fire a gun from inside the warehouse as a distraction. He then walks to the warehouse's side to take aim. The strategy works, and only Mauricio remains, who manages to slip into the warehouse, and apprehends Miguel. In Jim's presence, he points a gun at Miguel, compelling him to drop his weapon. Mauricio then coerces Miguel into shooting Jim. But as it turns out, Miguel is the smarter of the 2. He was able to empty the cartridges before shooting, allowing Jim to leap at Mauricio. Miguel wants to assist Jim after witnessing their fight, and pulls out his gun, and aims it towards Mauricio. Instead of pleading for compassion, Mauricio dares Miguel to a gunfight. Jim doesn't want Miguel to be a killer, so he quickly grabs the gun and shoots Mauricio. He gives Mauricio 2 options: die by his hands, or take his own life. He goes with the second choice. With their pursuers now dead, Jim and Miguel continue their journey to the address. Miguel knocks on the door, and when it opens, he is greeted by his aunt and grandma. He looks back, but Jim has vanished. Jim staggers up the bus, and sits in the passenger seat, clutching his stabbed stomach. He slowly closes his eyes, and slumps back. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe us for more videos.